The whistle shrieked, slicing through the roar of the crowd, and I fumbled the ball, my heart pounding as it skidded across the turf. Across the field, Ethan Carter, all blonde hair and smug confidence, smirked as he sprinted past me, his team claiming victory in the final seconds. I wanted to hate him, God. I needed to hate him, but the way his eyes caught mine in the locker room afterward made my chest tighten in ways I couldn't explain. My name's Lucas Reed, quarterback for the Jefferson High Wildcats. And Ethan was my counterpart at Lincoln High, our fiercest rivals. At 18, I'd built my life around football. The one thing that made sense in the chaos of a small-town Ohio life, where expectations weighed heavier than the pads on my shoulders. My dad, a former linebacker turned mechanic, saw every game as a referendum on my future. His voice barking from the stands, "Don't choke, Lucas." Ethan, though, he was everything I was: polished, effortless, the golden boy who seemed to glide through life while I clawed for every yard. That night, after the game, the locker room was a haze of sweat and defeat. My teammates shuffled out, muttering about bad calls. But I stayed, peeling off my gear, replaying every mistake. Ethan's team had won 28-24, and I could still hear their cheers echoing from the parking lot. I was a loner, so I thought when the door creaked open. Ethan stood there, still in his jersey, his blonde hair damp and sticking to his forehead. He didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the lockers, watching me. "You played hard out there, Reed," he said finally, his voice low, almost gentle. It wasn't the tone I expected. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the bench. "What do you want, Carter?" I shot back, but my voice cracked, betraying the knot in my throat. He stepped closer, his blue eyes searching mine, and for a moment, the air felt too thick to breathe. "I don't know," he said, almost to himself. "I just couldn't leave yet." I didn't know what to make of it. Ethan and I had been rivals since sophomore year, trading wins and glares across the field. He was the guy who had everything: the college scouts, the charm, the perfect family who clapped politely from the bleachers. I was the kid from the wrong side of town, scraping by on grit and a scholarship dream. But in that locker room, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, something shifted. His gaze wasn't mocking or competitive, it was raw, unguarded, like he saw something in me I'd spent years hiding. The next week at school, I couldn't shake the memory of that moment. I caught myself watching him in the hallways, his easy laugh with his teammates, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. I told myself it was strategy, know your enemy, right? But deep down, I knew it was more. I'd always pushed those thoughts away, buried them under plays and practice, because guys like me didn't get to feel that way. Not in this town, where different was a dirty word. Friday's game was a rematch, and the stakes were higher. College scouts were in the stands, and my dad's voice was louder than ever, a constant drumbeat of pressure. I threw a perfect spiral in the third quarter, tying the game. But Ethan answered with a 40-yard run that left our defense in the dust. The crowd roared, and I hated how much I admired him, how his confidence made my own feel brittle. When the game ended, another loss, 31-27, I lingered again, expecting the locker room to be empty. But Ethan was there, just like before, his shoulder pads off, his expression softer than the scoreboard suggested. "You're better than you think, Lucas," he said, tossing a towel over his shoulder. "Why do you let them get in your head?" I bristled, assuming he meant my team, but his eyes flicked toward the stands, where my dad's silhouette had loomed all night. I didn't know how to respond. No one had ever called it out like that. Not so plainly. I muttered something about needing to shower and turned away. But his hand grazed my arm, stopping me. "Hey," he said. "Softer now. You're not alone in this. You know." Those words stuck with me, burrowing into places I didn't want to examine. I spent the weekend replaying them, torn between anger and something I couldn't name. Ethan Carter, my rival, wasn't supposed to see me like that. He wasn't supposed to make me feel seen at all. By Monday, rumors were swirling. Someone had seen us talking in the locker room. And in a town like ours, whispers spread faster than wildfire. "You and Carter buddies now." My teammate Jake sneered at lunch, his tone sharp enough to cut. I shrugged it off, but the looks followed Mimi Dad's, my coaches, even my own in the mirror. I didn't know what I was feeling, only that it scared me. And yet, when I saw Ethan at the next practice, his nod felt like a lifeline, like he knew the storm I was drowning in. We started talking more, first about football, then about everything else. Late-night texts about game strategies turned into confessions about pressure, family, and the weight of being who everyone expected. Ethan's perfect life wasn't so perfect as parents' expectations were a different kind of cage. Polished, but just as heavy. One night, under the bleachers after a game, he admitted he'd been watching me for years. Not just as a rival, but as someone who got under his skin in ways he didn't understand until now. I didn't know how to respond. My heart was racing, and every instinct screamed to run. But I stayed. His hand brushed mine, and for the first time, I didn't pull away. It was terrifying and electric, like stepping onto the field before a game, knowing everything could change in a single play. That moment under the bleachers lingered like a bruise, tender and impossible to ignore. I'd always prided myself on control in the field, in my head, in my life, but Ethan was unraveling me. One glance, one touch at a time. By the time we faced Lincoln High again, I was a mess of nerves. Not just for the game, but for what came after. When the crowds were gone and it was just us. The game was brutal. A 35-30 nail-biter that ended with Ethan's team pulling ahead in the final minute. I'd thrown 2 touchdowns, but it wasn't enough. And the weight of my dad's disappointment was already settling in my bones. In the locker room, I sat on the bench, head in my hands. When Ethan walked in, he didn't gloat. Instead, he sat beside me, close enough that our knees brushed. "You okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't, but I nodded, afraid to meet his eyes, afraid of what I'd see there or what he'd see in me. We started meeting in secret, stealing moments after practice or in the parking lot behind the school. It wasn't just talking anymore. It was the way his hand lingered on my shoulder, the way his laugh made my chest ache. I'd never felt this before, not with anyone, and it scared me as much as it thrilled me. Ethan, though, seemed fearless, like he'd already made peace with whatever this was. "I've known for a while," he told me one night, his voice steady. "About me. About this." He gestured between us, and I envied his certainty. I was still grappling with the word, the one I'd never dared say out loud. At school, the rumors grew louder. Jake and a few others started throwing around slurs, their voices low but sharp, like they were testing me. I laughed it off, but it stung, and Ethan noticed. "They're just scared of what they don't get," he said one evening as we sat in his truck, the windows fogging up from the cold. "You don't have to fight this alone, Lucas." But I felt alone. caught between who I was supposed to be and who I was starting to understand I might be. My dad's pressure didn't help. He'd started noticing my distraction, my missed passes, my late nights. You throwing away your shot for some friendship. He spat one night, the word dripping with suspicion. I wanted to tell him the truth, to scream it. But the thought of his reaction, his fists, his silence kept me quiet. Ethan, though, was my anchor. He'd text me after every blowout with my dad. His words simple but steady. You're enough. You've always been enough. One night, after a particularly bad fight at home, I showed up at Ethan's house, my eyes red and my hands shaking. His parents were out, and he pulled me inside. No questions asked. We sat on his couch, and for the first time, I let myself lean into him, his arms wrapping around me like they could hold the world at bay. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, my voice breaking. Be this. Ethan didn't push. He just held me tighter, his breath warm against my neck, and whispered, "You don't have to know yet. Just be here." The next game was a turning point. I played like my life depended on it, channeling every ounce of fear and confusion into each pass. We won, 42-38. And for once, my dad's nod from the stands felt like enough. But it was Ethan's grin from across the field that lit me up inside. Afterward, in the locker room, he pulled me into a corner, away from the others. "You were incredible out there," he said, his voice thick with pride. Then, before I could stop him, he kissed me quick, desperate, like he'd been holding it back for years. My heart stopped, then raced, and for a moment, I forgot the world outside. But the world didn't forget us. Jake had seen us, his shadow lingering in the doorway. The next day, the whispers turned into shouts. Fags. Someone scrawled on my locker, the word jagged and red. Ethan wanted to confront them, his fists clenched, but I stopped him. "It's not worth it," I said, but my voice shook. I wasn't sure what was worth it anymore, not when every step toward Ethan felt like a step toward a cliff. The word on my locker burned into me, a scarlet letter I couldn't scrub away. I avoided Ethan at school, my head down, my heart racing every time I passed the spot where Jake's eyes had caught us. But Ethan wasn't one to back down. He found me at lunch, pulling me into an empty classroom. "You can't let them win, Lucas," he said, his voice fierce. "This is us. This is real." I wanted to believe him, but fear was a heavier opponent than any defensive line. That week, practice was hell. My teammates' glances were sharp, their tackles harder than necessary. Coach pulled me aside, his face grim. "Focus. Read. Scouts don't care about your drama." He didn't say the word, but it hung there, unspoken. I nodded, my throat tight, and threw myself into drills, hoping sweat could drown out the noise in my head. But every night, Ethan's texts were there, steady as a heartbeat. "I'm not going anywhere." The next game was away, at Lincoln High, Ethan's turf. The stands were a sea of red and gold, their cheers a wall of sound. I played with a fire I didn't know I had, each pass a defiance of the whispers, each yard a step toward something bigger. We lost, 27-24, but I'd thrown 3 touchdowns. And for once, I felt untouchable. Ethan found me after, in the visitors' locker room, his smile brighter than the stadium lights. "You're unstoppable," he said, and when he hugged me, I didn't care who saw. But someone did. My dad was waiting outside, his face a storm cloud. "What the hell's going on with you and that Carter kid?" he demanded, his voice low but lethal. I froze. The truth caught in my throat like a bad pass. "Nothing," I lied. But his eyes narrowed, and I knew he didn't believe me. That night, he didn't speak to me. The silence worse than any shouting match. Ethan and I kept meeting, stealing moments in the shadows under the bleachers. In his truck, once in the woods behind the school. Every touch, every kiss, was a rebellion, but it came with a cost. The rumors spread beyond school, into the town, where gossip was currency. My dad's co-workers started asking questions, their voices dripping with judgment. Ethan's parents, too, started to notice, their polite smiles turning brittle. "We just want what's best for you," his mom said one night, her eyes avoiding mine. I wondered if they saw me as the problem, the kid from the wrong side of town dragging their son down. One evening, Ethan took me to a diner outside town, a place where no one knew us. We sat in a corner booth, sharing fries and stories, pretending the world wasn't closing in. "What happens after graduation?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan reached for my hand under the table. "We figure it out. Together." His certainty was a lifeline, but I couldn't shake the fear that together was a luxury we couldn't afford. The next game was the regional championship, and the pressure was suffocating. Scouts from Ohio State and Michigan were there, their clipboards a promise of escape. I played like my future depended on it because it did. We won, 35-28, and the crowd's roar was deafening. But all I could see was Ethan across the field, his smile cutting through the chaos. In the locker room, he pulled me aside again, his hands on my shoulders. "You're gonna make it, Lucas," he said, his voice thick. "And I'm gonna be right there with you." But the world had other plans. That night, someone slashed my tires, leaving a note under my wiper, "Leave him alone." I didn't tell Ethan, but he saw the damage the next day, his face darkening. "This stops now," he said, his voice shaking with anger. I grabbed his arm, pleading, "Don't. It'll only make it worse." But Ethan wasn't listening. He was ready to fight, and I wasn't sure I could stop Heimer if I wanted to. Ethan's anger was a fire I couldn't douse. He confronted Jake at practice, his voice echoing across the field. "You got a problem. Say it to my face." He spat, his fists clenched. Jake smirked, but the rest of the team went quiet, their eyes darting between us. I pulled Ethan back, my heart pounding. "Let it go," I whispered, but he shook his head, his jaw tight. "I'm done hiding. Lucas, aren't you?" I wasn't. Not yet. The note on my car, the word on my locker, my dad's silence, they were chains I couldn't break. But Ethan's defiance was contagious, and part of me wanted to stand with him, to stop running. That night, we drove to the lake, the water black and still under the stars. "I can't lose you," I admitted, my voice raw. Ethan turned to me, his eyes soft but fierce. "You won't. But we can't keep doing this halfway." The next week was a blur of games and tension. We won again, 38-31, and the scouts were circling, their offers a lifeline to a future where I could be more than my dad's shadow. But the rumors followed us, relentless. Someone spray-painted Ethan's locker, too, and his parents grounded him, their voices sharp through his bedroom door. "You're throwing everything away," his dad said, and I felt the weight of it, like I was the one ruining him. We started meeting less, Not because we wanted to, but because the world wouldn't let us. My dad's questions grew sharper, his eyes searching mine for answers I couldn't give. At school, Jake and his friends circled like vultures, their taunts louder now, fueled by the town's whispers. Ethan wanted to go public, to tell everyone, but I begged him to wait. Just until the season's over, I said, hating how weak I sounded. He nodded, but I saw the hurt in his eyes, and it cut deeper than any slur. The state championship was looming, and with it, the chance to prove myself. I trained harder, pushed further, but every night, I dreamed of Ethan off his hands, his voice, the way he made me feel whole. One night, he showed up at my window, his face pale. "I can't keep pretending," he said, his voice breaking. "I love you, Lucas. I need you to say it back." I froze. The words stuck in my throat. I wanted to say them, but fear held me back. A wall I couldn't climb. He left before I could speak, and the silence he left behind was deafening. The next day, I found a letter in my locker, not hate this time, but Ethan's handwriting. "I'm not giving up on us, but I need you to fight, too." I read it over and over, my hands shaking. I wanted to fight, but I didn't know how. Not when my dad's voice echoed in my head. Not when the town's judgment felt like a noose. The championship game was electric. The stands packed, the air thick with anticipation. I played like a man possessed. Every pass a defiance, every yard a declaration. We were tied, 28-28, with seconds left. I threw a Hail Mary pass, and when it landed in my receiver's hands, the crowd erupted. We won, 34-28, and for a moment, I was invincible. But Ethan wasn't there. He'd left the game early, and the emptiness hit harder than any tackle. I found him later, sitting on the bleachers, his face buried in his hands. "I can't keep doing this alone," he said, his voice raw. I sat beside him, my heart pounding. "You're not alone," I said finally, the words breaking free. "I love you, Ethan. I'm just scared." He looked at me, his eyes wet, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my own courage. Saying those words, "I love you," changed everything. It was like stepping off a cliff, terrifying but freeing. Ethan's smile, small and shaky, was worth it. But the world didn't stop turning, and the consequences came fast. By Monday, the whole school seemed to know. Whispers followed me in the halls, and Jake's smirk was a constant shadow. "Guess you're not just rivals anymore," he said at practice, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I ignored him, but my hands shook as I tied my cleats. My dad was worse. He cornered me that night, his face red. "Is it true?" he demanded. "You and that Carter boy." I couldn't lie anymore. Not after Ethan. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady despite the fear. His silence was worse than I'd imagined. His back turned as he walked out. I didn't see him for 2 days, and when he came back, his eyes avoided mine. I'd lost something, but I'd gained something. To Ethan, waiting for me at the edge of the field, his hand outstretched. We decided to stop hiding. It wasn't easy. Ethan's parents were colder now, their disappointment a quiet blade. But we held on, meeting at the diner, the lake, anywhere we could steal a moment. The town's judgment was relentless graffiti on our cars. Slurs shouted from passing trucks, but Ethan's hand in mine made it bearable. "We're stronger than this," he'd say, and I started to believe him. The season was over. But the scouts were still calling. Ohio State offered me a partial scholarship, and Ethan got one from Michigan. The future was close enough to touch, but it meant distance hundreds of miles between us. We talked about it one night, lying on a blanket by the lake, the stars brighter than I'd ever noticed. "We'll make it work," Ethan said, his fingers tracing mine. Long distance isn't forever. I wanted to believe him, but the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. At school, things got uglier. Jake and his friends cornered me in the parking lot one day, their voices low and menacing. "You think you can just walk around like this?" Jake said, shoving me. Before I could react, Ethan was there, pushing him back. It almost came to blows, but a teacher broke it up, sending us all home with warnings. That night, Ethan showed up at my house, his knuckles bruised. "I'm not letting them hurt you," he said, and I kissed him, hard, like it could keep the world at bay. But the world kept coming. My dad finally spoke, his voice cold. "You're throwing away everything I built for you." I wanted to scream that I was building something better, but I just nodded. The fight drained out of me. Ethan's parents were no better, threatening to cut him off if he didn't fix this. We were 18, on the cusp of freedom, but it felt like we were fighting a war. One night, we drove to Columbus, just to get away. We wandered the city, anonymous in the crowd, and for a few hours, we were just two guys in love. Not rivals, not outcasts. Ethan laughed at a street performer. His face lit up, and I realized I'd do anything to keep that light in him. "We're gonna be okay," I said, and for the first time, I believed it. Back home, the pressure didn't let up. The local paper ran a story about controversy in the football program, and though they didn't name us, everyone knew. My scholarship offer was still on the table, but the coach hinted it could vanish if I didn't keep my head down. Ethan's offer was shakier, his parents' influence a constant threat. But we held on, our love a quiet rebellion against a town that wanted to break us. Graduation was 3 months away, and the weight of it pressed harder every day. Ethan and I were out now. No more hiding. But it came at a cost. My dad barely spoke to me, his silence a wall I couldn't breach. Ethan's parents were worse, their disappointment a constant hum in his life. But we had each other, and that was enough to keep going. We'd sneak away to the lake, the diner, the woods, anywhere we could be us. Not the town scandal. The harassment didn't stop. Jake and his crew escalated, slashing Ethan's tires, leaving notes in both our lockers. One day, they cornered us behind the gym, their voices thick with hate. "You're disgusting," Jake spat, and before I could stop him, Ethan swung. The fight was quick, brutal, and ended with both of them bloodied and me pulling Ethan away. We were suspended for a week, and the school board talked about expelling us. Ethan's scholarship offer was rescinded, and mine hung by a thread. That night, we sat in his truck, the air heavy with defeat. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice breaking. I couldn't let them talk like that." I took his hand, my own knuckles bruised from the scuffle. "We're in this together," I said, and for once, I meant it without fear. But the reality was sinking in. Our love was a target, and the town wasn't going to let us forget it. We started planning our escape. College was our ticket out, but it meant leaving each other. Ohio State was a 6-hour drive from Michigan, and neither of us had the money for constant visits. "We'll call every day," Ethan promised, his voice fierce. "We'll make it work." I nodded, but the distance felt like a betrayal. like the world was winning after all. One night, I found my dad waiting for me in the kitchen, his face softer than I'd seen in months. "I don't get it," he said, his voice low. "But you're my son." It wasn't acceptance. Not fully. But it was a crack in the wall. And I clung to it. Ethan's parents were harder. Their silence a rejection he carried like a wound. But we kept going, holding on to the moments we stole kisses in the rain. Late-night drives. Promises whispered under the stars. The final straw came a month before graduation. Someone set fire to Ethan's car, the flames licking the night sky outside his house. The police called it vandalism, but we knew better. Ethan's parents blamed me, their voices cold as they told him to end it. "You're ruining your life," his dad said, and I saw Ethan flinch, the weight of it crushing him. I wanted to fight for us, but I was tired. Too tired of the hate, the fear, the constant battle. We drove to the lake that night, the air thick with spring. Ethan was quiet, his hands gripping the wheel. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his voice raw. I leaned over, kissing him, pouring everything I had into it. "You won't," I said, but the words felt fragile, like they could break under the weight of the world. The next day, we made a decision. We'd leave town the day after graduation. Together. No matter what. We'd find a place. Maybe in Columbus. Where we could start over. It was a dream. But it was ours. And it kept us going through the final weeks of school. The harassment didn't stop. But we faced it together. Our hands clasped. Our heads high. The weeks before graduation were a gauntlet. The town's hatred was a constant hum. But Ethan and I were done hiding. We walked into school hand in hand, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the occasional shove. My dad was trying, his gruff attempts at conversation a fragile bridge. Ethan's parents were colder, their silence a wall he couldn't break. But we had our plan Columbus. A fresh start, and it was enough to keep us moving. The harassment escalated. Notes turned into threats, slipped under our doors, taped to our cars. One night, someone threw a brick through my window, the glass shattering across my room. My dad found me cleaning it up, his face pale. "This because of you and him?" he asked. I nodded, bracing for anger. But he just sighed, helping me sweep the glass. "I don't understand it," he said, "but I don't want you hurt." It was the closest he'd come to acceptance, and it gave me hope. Ethan wasn't so lucky. His parents gave him an ultimatum: end things with me or lose their support. He chose me, but it cost him his college fund, his car, his place in their home. He moved in with a cousin, and I spent every spare moment with him, trying to fill the void. "We'll be okay," I said, but the words felt hollow when I saw the pain in his eyes. The final game of the season was a charity match, a chance to end on a high note. We played Lincoln High again, and for once, it wasn't about rivalry. Ethan and I shared the field, our teams united for a cause bigger than us. We won, 40-35, and the crowd cheered for both of us. A rare moment of unity. Afterward, in the locker room, Ethan pulled me close, his voice low. "This is what I want," he said. "You, me, no more hiding." I kissed him, not caring who saw. And for once, no one said a word. But the peace didn't last. The night before graduation, Jake and his friends jumped Ethan in the parking lot. I found him bloodied, his lips split, his eyes fierce despite the pain. "I'm fine," he insisted, but I wasn't. I wanted to fight, to make them pay. But Ethan stopped me. We're better than them, he said, his hand on my chest. We're getting out. That's what matters. Graduation day was bittersweet. My dad was there, his nod a quiet acknowledgement. Ethan's parents didn't show, but his cousin cheered loud enough for both of them. We walked across the stage. Our diploma's a ticket to freedom, but the town's shadow lingered. That night, we packed our bags, ready to leave for Columbus. My scholarship was secure, and Ethan had a job lined up, a chance to rebuild. We said goodbye to the lake, the bleachers, the places that had held our story. This isn't the end, Ethan said, his hand in mine. It's just the start. I nodded, my heart full, knowing he was right. We'd fought for this, and we'd won out the game. But something bigger. Columbus was a new world, loud and bright and anonymous. We rented a tiny apartment, the walls thin and the floors creaky. But it was ours. My scholarship covered tuition, and Ethan's job at a local gym paid the bills. We were broke, exhausted, and happier than we'd ever been. The town's hate was a distant memory, replaced by late-night talks, shared meals, and the quiet joy of waking up together. My dad called sometimes, his voice awkward but trying. He sent a check once. No note, just his name scrawled on the envelope. It was enough. Ethan's parents were still silent, but he was building a life without them, his smile brighter every day. We went to Pride events, tentative at first, then bold, our hands clasped, our love no longer a secret. Football was still part of me, but it wasn't everything. I played for Ohio State, each game a chance to prove myself. But Ethan was my anchor, his cheers louder than the crowd's. He started taking night classes, dreaming of coaching one day, and I saw the fire in him. The same fire that had drawn me to him on the field. One night, a year after we left, we went back to the lake. It was different now, quieter. The town's shadow faded. We sat on the shore, the water reflecting the stars, and Ethan pulled out a ring simple. Silver. Nothing fancy. I don't care what the world says, he said, his voice steady. You're my everything. I said yes, my voice breaking. And we kissed, the past falling away. We weren't naive. The world wasn't perfect, and hate still lingered. But we'd learned to fight not with fists, but with love, with resilience, with the life we were building. Back in Columbus, we planned a future, maybe a house, maybe kids, definitely each other. The field had made us rivals, but the locker room had made us whole. And that was the victory that mattered. Years later, at a high school reunion, we walked in hand. Jake was there, older, quieter, his eyes avoiding ours. The town had changed. Not much, but enough. We didn't need their approval. Not anymore. We had each other. And that was the truest thing I'd ever known.